Alright guys, I am back yet again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 2 of my Brandt Gate Seraph prison deck. So version 2, everything through the additional special set, so through a fraction of the booster set 11. And this deck has pretty much been overhauled actually. We're running a lot less grade 2s now, since this deck has received a bunch of good grade 1 and grade 3 cards that have been added to the deck now. So I'm actually not running Refablishment Dock anymore in this deck, so it has kind of been overhauled. But the deck overall has received a lot more draw power, as well as a lot more consistency. So anyway, we'll be going through the deck as always, and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So starting first with the ride deck, it is the same as before. So we have our grade 0 starter, which is Aurora Battle Princess Ruby Red. So when she's rode upon, if you win second, draw a card. Same old starter skill. Next for the grade 1, we have Aurora Battle Princess Kyanite Blue. So she has two auto abilities. First one says when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you search your deck for up to one prison card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So guarantees that you get your prison into your hand, which is obviously necessary for this entire deck to function. So guaranteeing that you have that is very good. That also means you only have to run one copy of the prison, since you can search it out immediately. So very vital skill for the deck to function. And then she has her second auto ability that says when this unit is placed on a rearguard circle, if one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you can counterblast one and soul blast one and draw a card. So this ability isn't really ever used for anything, since she doesn't end up on rearguard circle ever, and we don't have any copies of her in the main deck either. So yeah, this ability doesn't really see any use. Next for the grade 2, we have Aurora Battle Princess Resot Pink. So her auto ability says when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and imprisons it in your prison. So just a free one card into your prison when you ride into her. Also a free -1 to your opponent since they're losing a card from their hand. Of course, they can potentially, get that card back if they use the prison skill to call it back, but that does cost them some resources. So just a very nice on-ride skill. And again, she has a continuous ability when she's on rearguard circle that says if one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 2,000. So once again, she doesn't really ever end up on rearguard circle, so that ability isn't used for anything. So then lastly, the grade 3 is Aurora Battle Princess Seraph Snow. So she has her continuous ability that says during your turn, if one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 10,000, and if 3 or more cards are imprisoned, this unit gets drive plus 1. And then she also has her activate ability that's active on both Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. That says once per turn, you can counterblast 1 to choose 2 of your opponent's rearguards and imprison them in your prison. So her second skill lets you potentially -2 your opponent to grab 2 of their rearguards into your prison. And that'll give you 2 of the 3 you need to get the full advantage of her first ability, giving her an extra 10k and triple drive. Which, if they didn't bail out the one you grabbed from Resot Pink, that would be your 3 right there. So that will get the first skill online with just her own ability. If they did bail out that one prisoner, then you'll have to use some other card to get the third prisoner in there in order to get that extra drive check. But that shouldn't be too much trouble considering how many different imprisoning cards we have in this deck. So that'll give you a Vanguard that can hit at least 23k with triple drive on turn 3. So pretty good numbers. And of course that extra pressure from the extra trigger chance. So pretty good Vanguard. Now you should only be on her for the one turn really, because on turn 4 you should be riding up into your grade 4 form. But she does make a pretty good boss unit for that one turn. And speaking of which, moving on to the main deck, first off for the grade 4s, we have just 3 copies of Aurora Fierce Princess Seraph Pure Light. So this is her grade 4 form, and she has her auto ability that says when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you can counterblast one and soul blast one card with Seraph in its card name, and your opponent chooses 2 cards each from their hand, rear guards, and soul, and imprisons them in your prison. So this is an incredibly powerful ability, taking potentially 6 of your opponent's cards and putting them into your prison. That's also potentially up to a -4 to your opponent, since they're losing 2 cards from their hand and 2 of their rear guards. And they're also losing out on 2 resources from their soul, assuming they had, cards in their soul. So that can really hurt certain decks too, if, they're really soul reliant. So a massive blow to your opponent's card advantage, while also giving you potentially up to 6 cards into your prison, which can help set up for her continuous ability. That says, during your turn, all of your front row units get power plus 5,000 for every 2 of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison, and if 10 or more cards are imprisoned, all of your front row units get critical plus 1. So again, a very powerful skill, giving potentially a massive amount of power to your front row, as well as that extra critical. Now you need to get at least 10 cards into your prison to take full advantage of this, which, if your opponent is trying to play around your deck, then that can be difficult sometimes if they keep, calling stuff out of your prison. But again, her first skill can give you potentially up to 6 just by riding into her, so that'll get you over halfway there on her own. So it shouldn't be too bad making it to 10 most of the time. And if you do make it to 10, that's an extra 25k and an extra crit to your entire front row. So this is still just a 3 attack deck, but that puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, since all those columns will be hitting absolutely massive numbers, and they all will have that crit pressure as well. So an extremely powerful boss unit for this deck, and we actually were able to drop this down just to 3 copies instead of 4 like before, because now this card actually is searchable, thanks to the write-up card in this deck. So you should be able to go into it pretty consistently as well. So yeah, absolutely fantastic Vanguard for this deck. So that is the only grade 4, so moving on to the grade 3s. First off, we have 3 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Penetrate Aquas. So one of the new cards added to this deck. And she has an auto ability that says when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, your opponent chooses a card from their drop and imprisons it in your prison. So again, just a free inmate into your prison, and it lets you grab from your opponent's drop zone, so there should always be at least 1 card in there, so you don't have to worry about your opponents, emptying out their board or anything and not being able to imprison anything. So free prisoner as soon as you call into her. And she also has a continuous ability when she's on Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle that says if 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000, shield plus 10,000, and for the battle this unit attacked, when your opponent would call cards from their hand to Guardian Circle, they must call 2 or more at the same time. So a very, very nice skill, letting her potentially be a 10k shield if you need that extra defensive option, or a 18k body with guard restrict, which when combined with Seraph Pure Light skill, if you have the 10 cards in your prison, then that means she should be hitting for a minimum of 43,002 crits with guard restrict. So definitely a dangerous card for your opponent to be facing. They still can perfect guard it, but if they do, they have to call 2 or more at the same time, so you can force them to at least waste 1 more card out of their hand. So a very nice offensive and defensive option for this deck. So next we have 1 copy of Aurora Battle Princess Launcher Charlene. So she has 2 continuous abilities. First one says during the battle this unit attacked, your opponent cannot call normal units from hand to Guardian Circle and cannot play blitz orders from hand. And then she has her second continuous ability that says if the number of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison is 5 or less, this unit cannot attack. So again, another very nice guard restrict ability. This one can stop sentinels entirely, since it stops them from calling normal units and playing blitz orders. So that'll stop regular sentinels and Elementaria Sanctitude. But her second ability does require you to have at least 6 cards in your prison in order for her to be able to attack at all. which again shouldn't be too much trouble thanks to Pure Light's ability. So as long as you get those 6 cards in your prison, then she can be hitting for massive numbers and 2 crits thanks to Pure Light skill, and having that guard restrict stopping your opponent from being able to perfect guard her. So again, a very nice offensive option. Now I am mostly running this card at 1 just to have another grade 3 rear guard in the deck with a different name for the next card we'll be going over here in a second. So if you want to replace this with that one other grade 3 Aurora Battle Princess that can rest units that your opponent calls from your prison, I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. But if you'd rather run that than this card, you can go that route. I went for the offensive option with Launcher Charlene, while that other card is more of a defensive option, but it's pretty much just player preference. So then lastly for the grade 3s, we have 1 copy of our Regales piece, normal order, Forbidal Surrogate. So there's no cost to play it, and it lets you search your deck or drop for up to a total of 2 grade 3 or 4 unit cards with different card names and reveal them. And then you call all the revealed grade 3 cards to rearguard circle, and put all revealed grade 4 cards into hand, and if you search the deck, shuffle the deck. So again, this card is the reason I'm running 2 differently named grade 3 rearguards in this deck, since it can call up to 2 grade 3s to your board, or get a grade 3 on your board and a grade 4 into your hand, which the new grade 1 ride-up card in this deck can actually let you superior ride into Pure Light from your hand, deck, or drop. So you don't necessarily need Pure Light in your hand anymore in order to go into her if you have a copy of that card in your hand. So getting the grade 4 into your hand isn't as important as before if you have that card. So you can just use this to grab a copy of Penetrate Aquas and a copy of Launcher Charlene from your deck or drop and get them onto your board. So that can fill up your entire front row with this 1 card right there and give you 2 powerful offensive units with guard restrict on each. So still an extremely helpful card for this deck. So that is all the grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have 2 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Agra Rouge. So she has a continuous ability when she's on rearguard circle or guardian circle. That says if 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000, shield plus 10,000. And then she also has her auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards and imprison it in your prison. So she can be a 15k body on board and a 15k shield, potentially as well. And her second ability does let you potentially imprison another one of your opponent's rearguards. Now they do have to have a front row rearguard in order for you to target with that ability. So depending on the deck, they might be able to empty out their own front row. Or if they only filled up their front row, then you might have already emptied it out with some of your other imprisoning skills. So this second skill actually isn't used as much as before. It also costs a Soul Blast, and this deck actually is more tight on Soul than it was before. So second skill is a bit more situational at this point. I am mostly just running her for her first skill, mainly to be the 15k shield for the extra defensive option, since Pure Light's going to be powering up your whole front row so much anyway that the extra 5k power doesn't matter that much. But the extra 15k shield can always be helpful. So yeah, that kind of has become the primary use for this card at this point. So next we got 2 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Accuse Macarite. So she has an auto ability that says when this unit is placed on a rearguard circle from hand, you can Soul Blast 1 and your opponent imprisons the top card of their deck in your prison face up. Then if 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this is another option that's good for decks that can empty out their own board or don't call any rearguards or whatever. She lets you imprison from the top of their deck, so it can be another source for you to get cards into your prison if your opponent doesn't have any rearguards out. Again, she costs a Soul Blast, and that power gain only lasts for the 1 turn, so the turn after you call her, she is just a vanilla on your board. So you can just intercept her away at that point and call something better the next turn. but against certain matchups, she can be a useful card in filling up your prison. So next we have 2 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Perio Turquoise. So she has a continuous ability that says during your turn, if 2 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 5,000. And then she also has her auto ability when she's on front row rear guard circle that says when your opponent's card imprisoned in your prison is placed on rear guard circle, that unit gets power minus 5,000 until end of turn. So again, she can be a 15k body on your board, and her second ability allows you to weaken any of the units that your opponent bails out of your prison. So it can just be an annoying card to your opponents to weaken their formation if they want to focus on, trying to keep your prison count down low. If you want, you could replace 1 or both copies of this card with that 1 grade 3 I mentioned earlier that lets you rest your opponent's cards when they call them out of the prison instead of just weakening them. Of course, that card is a grade 3, so it doesn't have any shield value. So it's kind of player preference at that point. But I did just like keeping this card in at 2 of, just kind of being an annoying card for your opponent. So next we got 1 copy of Aurora Battle Princess Dairy Violet. So she has an auto ability that says when this unit's put on Guardian Circle, if 1 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose 1 of your units, and it cannot be hit by a grade 2 or lower unit's attack until end of that battle. So this card is effectively a 5th perfect card in this deck if your opponent is attacking with a grade 2 or lower unit. So a very nice defensive option. Again, it is another Soul Blast cost, which we do have quite a bit of in this deck now. So you do need to be mindful of that. But she can entirely stop any grade 2 or lower unit's attack on her own. And she does work if you guard with her from hand or intercept with her. So she can still be an offensive unit on your board if you need a body in your front row as well. So still a very good card for this deck. If you want to drop some of the other optional cards in this deck and maybe up her to 2, you can go that route as well. So next we have 1 copy of our normal order. Moment of Capture, Aurora Battle Princess 24-hour coverage. So you can play this card with a Soul Blast 1, and it says if your opponent's hand has 4 or more cards, they choose a card from their hand and imprison it in your prison. Then if 3 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you choose 1 of your units and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this is one of those optional cards that you could drop if you want to. It is another Soul Blast cost, which again, we're tight on Soul. But it lets you grab a card from your opponent's hand to get into your prison. So you can potentially weaken their defensive options for that turn. So that gives you an extra prisoner, and it also lets you give 5k to 1 of your units. So this card is basically a 1-for-1, since you're losing a card to play it, but your opponent's losing a card as well. But it increases your prison population and also powers up 1 of your units. So still can be a useful card, especially if they don't have many rear guards out on board. It's an alternate location to get those prisoners from. So I do like having it at the 1 of. So then lastly for the grade 2s, we have 1 copy of our Blitz Order, Explosive Melting Heart. So again, you play this with a Soul Blast 1, but it lets you choose 1 of your opponent's attacking units, and it gets power minus 5,000 until end of turn for each of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison. So potentially a very large shield value on this card effectively, since they lose 5k for each card in your prison. So usually you can get at least 10 to 15k worth of shield out of this. Potentially more if your opponent really isn't playing around your deck and you got a high prison population at the moment. So this can be a really big shield card for this deck. It is yet another Soul Blast cost, but having that nice defensive option is very good for this deck. So I think it is still worth running at the 1 of. So that is all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 3 copies of Security Upgrader. So he has an activate ability that says if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Seraph in its card name and you did not ride this turn, you can retire this unit to search your deck, hand, or drop for up to 1 grade 4 unit card with Seraph in its card name, write it as stand, and if you search the deck, shuffle the deck. And if you rolled the card, your opponent chooses a card from their drop and imprisons it in your prison, and the cost of the original auto ability of that ridden unit decreases by Counterblast 1 until end of turn. So this is the write-up card for Seraph Pure Light. Now, unlike the other write-up cards in the other Grade 4 decks, this one actually doesn't speed up the deck any, since you can't use this to go into Pure Light on turn 3, since its ability says that you have to have not ridden that turn. So it's still a turn 4 play at the soonest, which is probably a good thing, honestly, considering how powerful Pure Light is. Facing that on turn 3 could be really bad. So it doesn't speed up the deck, but it does make the deck a lot more consistent, since it lets you ride from your hand, deck, or drop. You can grab Pure Light from pretty much anywhere except your damage zone at that point. So it really helps with the deck's consistency. It also gives you another prisoner, since it lets you grab a card from your opponent's drop and throw it into prison. So that will be on top of the up to 6 that you're getting off of Pure Light. So just that play alone will get you potentially 7 of the 10 you need into your prison right there, in order to get the 10 that you need for Pure Light skill. And this card also removes the Counterblast cost for a Pure Light skill as well. So can help you save on those Counterblast resources, and essentially the only cost of that skill at that point will be Soul Blasting out your other Seraph card from your soul. Which, you know, if you Soul Blast out another copy of Pure Light, of course you can just keep rewriting that same Pure Light back and forth from the drop if you have another copy of this card the next turn. So it also allows you to loop 2 copies of Pure Light in order to keep rewriting her every turn. So a very, very nice card for this deck. Again, if you want to drop some of those optional cards like the Grade 2 Normal Order or Perio Turquoise or whatever and bump this up to 4, you can go that route as well. But I usually find that I can pretty consistently go into Pure Light when I need to, with just the 3 copies. So next up, we got 3 copies of Blitzstaff Muna. So she has a continuous ability that says if your order zone has 3 or more cards, this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects and gets power plus 5,000. So this ability just checks for the number of cards in your order zone. So that includes both all of your opponent's cards that are in your prison and the prison itself. So you'll only need 2 inmates in your prison in order to get the skill online. And that will make this card a 13k body that can't be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So she has a nice protection ability, stopping her from being targeted by anything. And then she also has her auto ability that says once per turn, when any player's unit is placed on rearguard circle from your order zone during any player's main phase, you can Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. So this is an excellent skill for if your opponent is trying to play around your deck and they're calling stuff out of your prison to try to keep that prisoner count low. Whenever they call one from your prison, you can Soul Blast 1 and draw. So it does increase your card advantage, and it can really help mitigate the losses from, you know, losing those prisoners in your prison. Now, it is a once per turn ability, so if they call out 2, you know, with the prison's Counterblast ability, you will only be able to activate this once per copy on your board. But it still makes for a very nice draw engine for the deck. And again, it does eat a lot of soul, especially between, you know, all the other soul blasting abilities in this deck. But this is usually the primary one you want to use the soul on if you have the option, since getting that extra card advantage to your opponent's turn can be very, very helpful. So, a absolutely fantastic card overall for this deck. So next we have 2 copies of Hyperspeed Robo Cheval Stud. So he has an activate ability that says once per turn, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and imprison it in your prison. Then if 3 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you draw a card. So he fills a similar role to Muna now, being the draw engine for this deck, but he can also get you another prisoner into your prison. Again, if your opponent, you know, has some more rear guards out on their board. So if you're playing against decks that fill up their board very easily, this card can be very useful. It is an activate ability, so you can reuse it if he stays out on your board the next turn as well. He costs a Counterblast and a Soul Blast, but thanks to Security Upgrader, this deck isn't Counterblast heavy at all now. The Soul, again, can be a bit of an issue, but he can be a similar role filler as Muna is, giving you that extra draw power, but he can let you get that draw on your turn instead of your opponent's turn. So if you need the draw immediately to try to help, build a board or whatever, he can be a good option in those cases. So I still do like running him at just a 2 of. So next we have 4 copies of our Sentinel, which is Violate Dragon. Just your standard Perfect Guard. And then the last grade 1 in the deck is 1 copy of our Prison Set Order Galaxy Central Prison Galactolus. So you have to rest one of your units in order to play this card. So that means if you go second, you want to make sure you have a grade 1 in your opening hand to rest it in order to play this, so you don't have to rest your Vanguard and miss out on your drive check that turn. But then it has its auto ability that says when this card is put into the order zone, you soul charge 3. So that does help build up some soul for all our many soul blasting skills in this deck. And this guy's continuous ability while it's in the order zone that says when your opponent can normal call a rearguard, they can perform the following. Either Soul Blast one, and if they do so, they choose one of their imprisoned cards and call it the rearguard circle. Or they can Counterblast one, and if they do so, they choose 2 of their imprisoned cards and call them the rearguard circle. So this ability is for your opponent in order to be able to bail out their prisoners, though it does cost them some resources in order to do so. Either 1 soul to grab 1 card, or 1 Counterblast to gain 2 cards. So this does allow your opponent to get their cards back and decrease your prison population. But, forcing them to use up some of their resources can be still helpful as well, since if they get those cards back, they might not be able to use their skills, since they no longer have the resources available to pay the costs. But yeah, this is the 1 prison card in the deck, so it's obviously vital for the deck to be able to function. So that is all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 7 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal, and 1 over. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 3 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Laura Cielo. So just your vanilla crit. Additionally, we have 4 copies of Patrol Robo Decker Cop. So crit with a skill, at the end of the battle it boosted, you can put in your soul to choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So this can be another option to gain more soul if you're really desperate to use some of those soul blasting abilities. Next for the draws, we have 4 copies of Ameliorate Connector. So draw with a skill. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000. So you're a 10k shield draw trigger. And then for the heals, we have 4 copies of Aurora Battle Princess Treyus Green. So just a vanilla heal. Of course, if you want to run any effect heals, you can. And then our 1 over trigger is Star Dragon Deity of Infinitude, Eldo Breath. So his additional effect lets you double the power and critical of all of your front row units until end of turn. So always a very dangerous card, even more dangerous on pure light turns, since that'll give your entire front row a ridiculous amount of power. At least one of your units will be at 200 million plus. And if you have the 10 cards set up in your prison, that will put your entire front row to at least 4 critical as well. So, yeah, definitely a very dangerous card to check into. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our 1 fight with it. And let's see, I think we'll fight Doshi this time.
Are you ready?
And we will be going second.
Stand up, Vanguard. 俺のターン、ドロー。ライド。ターンエンド。私のターンね、ドロー。
Alright, so we'll drop... we'll drop that order, I guess. To ride Kyanite Blue. And we'll use her skill first to grab Galactolus from our deck. And then we'll use Ruby Red to draw. So I'm going to go ahead and call Cheval Stud over here. And then we can play Galactolus. So we'll rest Cheval Stud. And a prison skill, let us soul charge 3. And we soul charge 3 triggers. So I'm gonna just go ahead and attack. And then we still get a heal trigger, but that is actually wasted since we have nothing to heal.
Vanguard にアタック
And I'll let that one through. And we get a draw trigger.
Vanguard にアタックスキル発動パワープラス
And I think I'll let that one through too.
ドライブチェック ターンエンド
Alright, so I'll discard one of these aquas, I guess. To ride Resot Pink. And we'll use her skill to imprison one from his hand, which was a crit trigger. So, let's see, we will go ahead and move Cheval Stud up and call Agra Rouge. And we'll use her ability to Soul Blast one. And we'll imprison Travis. And we'll use Cheval Stud's ability as well to Counter Blast and Soul Blast. And we'll imprison Orlando, which gives us 3, so we get to draw. So then we'll just go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first.
No guard だ ダメージチェックドロートリガー
He gets a draw trigger. So we won't be able to hit his Vanguard again, but we'll have Cheval Stud take out his rear guard.
No guard
And we'll just end our turn.
俺のターンドロー勝負はこれからだライドスキル発動スキル発動スペリオルコールスキ
And
ル
he
発
calls
動
2 cards from our prison and rests them to retire Cheval Stud,
これで勝ちだスキル発動
and then uses Eugene's skill to Soul Blast
スペリオルコー
and
ル
call 4 from his deck.
スキル発動パワープラス
And you called a perfect guard and a heal trigger in that. So let's see, we will... we'll let that one through, I guess.
ダメージチェック
バンガードにアタックスキル発動パワープラス
And I think I'll let that one through too.
ノーガード
ドライブチェック ドライブチェック。勝ちが見えたな。アタックだ。
ダメージチェック。ドロートリガー。
And we get a draw trigger.
パワープラス。
ヴァンガードにアタック。
And let's see, we just need 5 to block that, but I think I'm gonna have to overguard a little here. We'll guard with that crit.
ガード。
ターンエン
私のターン。ドロー。
Alright, so we'll discard that heal, I guess.
セラスホワイトにライド。
Right, Seraph Snow. And we will go ahead and use our activate ability to counter blast.
華麗なる大砲撃の開幕開幕。
And we can imprison 2 of his rear guards, so we'll grab that column.
監獄に収容。
So that gets us back to 3 prisoners, so we will have triple drive this turn. So I'm going to go ahead and call Accused Macarite and use her ability to Soul Blast.
スキル発動。監獄に収容。
And we'll imprison from the top of the deck, which was Dustin. So then I'll go ahead and call Muna as well over here. Gains 5k and has our protection skill since we got 4 prisoners at the moment. So then we'll just go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first,
ヴァンガードにアタック。
who does have triple
ド。
drive.
ドライブチェック。オーバートリガー。
Oh, and we pulled our over trigger. So that'll give 100 million to Agra Rouge
パワープラス。パワー
and double everyone's power and
ク
critical.
リティカルプラス。ドライブチェック。ドライブチェック。キバレア。これが瀬戸たまりの魂じゃ。
So we might actually have him here if he can't block these other 2 attacks.
ダメージチェック。クリティカルトリガー。
He gets a crit trigger.
プラスパワープラスダメージチェック。クリティカルトリガー。
And he gets another crit trigger.
クリティカルプラスパワープラス。
Alright, so we'll attack with Agra Rouge for 200 million.
ガードにアタック。
And he does perfect guard.
キル発動。完全ガードだ。
But he's got to be able to block this other attack too, so we'll attack with Accused Macarite for 43,002 crit. And he did guard,
ガードだ。
getting those 2 damage triggers. Probably saved him there.
俺のターンだ。ドロー。ペルソナライド。
And he does get his Persona Raid.
スキル発動。
He used Eugene's skill to retire Agra Rouge.
スキル発動。
And he Durus' skill to retire Macarite.
スペリオルコ
And
ー
then he calls 2 out of our prison. And since he called from the prison, we can activate Muna's ability. So we'll Soul Blast 1
スキル発動。
and draw.
スキル発動。パワー
And he can't retire Muna since we still have 3 cards in our order zone.
スキル発動。パワープラス。
So let's see. I will let this one through, I think.
ノーガード。ダメージチェック。
ヴァンガードにアタックだ。
And I'm going to go ahead and just perfect guard that one.
スキル発動
And let's see, we'll discard. And we'll drop that heal, I guess.
完全ガード
ドライブチェックだ。ドライブチェックだ。ヴァンガードにアタックだ。
And we'll guard that one with that crit.
ガード
ターンエン
私のターンねドロー
Alright, so we do not want to ride. And instead, we are going to call Security Upgrader. And let's see, we got 2 cards in our prison. Pure Light will give us 6 more, so that'll be 8. Security Upgrader will be 1 more, so yeah, that'll be enough. So we do not need to use Seraph Snow's Activate ability right now. And instead, we'll just use Security Upgrader's ability. And retire him.
スキル発動
Which will let us Superior Ride from our deck, Seraph Pure Light.
セラフミアライトにライド
Then we get to imprison 1 from his drop. And then Pure Light skill will let us not counterblast thanks to Upgrader skill. And instead just Soul Blast Seraph Snow.
冷たい檻の中へようこそ
So we imprison 2 from his hand, soul, and rear guards. So that brings us to 9 prisoners. So then I will go ahead and call Penetrate Aquas from the hand and use her ability
スキル発動監獄に
to
しよう
imprison 1 more from the drop, which will give us the 10 we need to give our front row an extra crit. So then we'll call Launcher Charlene as well. And with that, I believe we are good. So we will go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first.
ヴァンガードにアタック
We need perfect guards again. But he's only got 2 cards in his hand. And he's got to block all these attacks. So we should have him here.
ドライブチェックヒールトリガー
And we get a heal trigger, which we do get. So we heal 1. And we will give that power to Launcher Charlene.
パワープラスドライブチェッククリティカルトリガー
And we get a crit trigger on top of that. So we'll give both those to Charlene as well.
クリティカルプラスパワープラス
So then we will attack with Penetrate Aquas for 56,002 crit with Guard Restrict.
ノーガード
And he's got to lay through.
ダメージチェックだ。ヒールトリガー
Oh, and he gets a heal trigger, which he does get.
パワープラス
So he'll survive this attack.
ダメージチェックだ。
But we got 1 more coming his way, and it's 58,003 crit
ヴァンガードにアタック
with Guard Restrict.
ノーガードだ。
And he's got to lay it through. So we should have him with
ダ
that.
メージチェックだ。ドロートリガーだ。
And yep, that draw does not save him, so we got him right there.
ビクトリー
So there you go. That was version 2 of my Seraph Prison deck. Which I really do like the upgrades that this deck has received. It's a lot more consistent now and even more powerful than before. So I will be back soon with more deck profiles. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.